1914, a guy was born and his name was Romain Gary. He moved to France when he was quite young, and his family changed their name from the rather Polish Gary to the more French Gary. So, because I'm an English speaker and you're presumably an English speaker too, we're going to call him Gary. During the Second World War, Gary became a bit of a war hero. Like, he was in the French resistance and he was in the Air Force. So when he went on to become a writer, everyone sort of judged his books of thinking of him as a patriot and sort of right-wing, and he was really successful, and then, you know, everyone really respected him, but he was kind of annoyed that everyone just pigeonholed him as this war hero. I mean, God, who wants to be known as a war hero? So he came up with a plan, which was that he would write under a pseudonym, Emile Ajar. He doesn't tell his publishers what he's doing. He has the manuscript sent to Brazil and then sent back to Paris to be published, and it's all going pretty well. He publishes one book as Ajar Gros Câlin, and that does pretty well, and then he publishes another book as Ajar called La Vie de Bonsoir, and that does really well. And this is where Gary starts to run into problems. The critics and the public were going, who is this Ajar? He's only done 2 books and he's done really, really well. He can't be a novice. It's got to be a pseudonym. And they're desperate for an interview with Emile Ajar. Who is this guy? So Gary comes up with a plan. He finds a cousin whose name is Paul Pavlowitch and says to him, look, the public need to know who Ajar is and they can't know it's me. Can you do an interview? I'll give you like a backstory or whatever, and you can pretend to be Emile Ajar. Except he must have slipped or something because they find out his name isn't Emile Ajar, it's Paul Pavlowitch. At crisis, particularly when they work out that Pavlowitch is related to Gary. So, in order to get past all this rumour or whatever, and so he can write his novels as Ajar in peace, Gary comes up with another plan. He's going to write Ajar's autobiography. So just to clarify things here, Romain Gary, whose name was actually Romain Gary, but whatever, is going to write an autobiography of his pseudonym Emile Ajar, who is also called Paul Pavlowitch. It makes sense. So he does. He writes an autobiography as Paul Pavlowitch, talking about his pseudonym, which is Emile Ajar, and he comes up with this idea that Emile Ajar / Paul Pavlowitch is a schizophrenic that lets him get over any vagueness or where he has to fictionalise things because it wouldn't match up with reality. And it works. The critics and the public, they fall for it, hook, line and sinker. This is a person, Emile Ajar, whose other name is Paul Pavlowitch. That's a person. Romain Gary is someone completely different. But it's hilarious because throughout the book, he's just basically playing games with you. The title of the book is called pseudonym, basically. He's just telling you this is a pseudonym, and everyone's going, yeah, of course it's a pseudonym. It's a pseudonym for Paul Pavlowitch. He came up with the name Emile Ajar. And you're like, no, it's a oh my God. Basically, I thought that was a bloody good trick, until I realised what else the title is referring to. Gary / Ajar came up with this phrase, which in French is faire pseudo, and in English that doesn't translate, but it means that to pretend you're something, to create an identity for yourself. And he's not talking about creating a whole other person to be your pseudonym. He's talking about the creating of yourself that you do from 9 to 5 every day, and the fact that we all have different sort of personas that we put on. Everyone does this. And it makes me start to think about other French writers like Sartre, who had this idea that personality isn't something you are, it's something you create. With everything you say and do and think, your personality is something you're creating for yourself and for other people. And that makes me think about how our identity now isn't just what we say and do, but also everything we tweet and tumble and put on YouTube. And that makes me think about how our identities are slightly more locked in place nowadays, and how I've been the singing girl since I was 12 years old, and my blog has been in place for 3 years, and you can still go back and see the first things I wrote on my blog 3 years ago. The moral of the story is, always have at least one pseudonym which no one knows about, and never connect Twitter or Tumblr to Facebook.